Okay. Hello everyone. Hi. How are we today? Oh, good, good. Well, thank you for coming. Really appreciate your spending your time with us this evening. I do want to let you know that we are live on Instagram at the moment. Do not worry. We may capture a little bit of your voices, but the camera is pointing this way, so it's absolutely fine. There's no danger. So thank you all for coming. I'm sure you're going to be a beautiful audience tonight. I can tell that some of you are bursting with questions for our two guest artists already. If you aren't, then I'll prompt you along the way. So just a little bit of health and safety before we get started properly. There is only one fire exit. It's there. If you smell something burning, run. But don't run over the other people. Try and avoid tripping over the chairs. You should be absolutely fine. Okay. The toilets, if anybody needs them, just towards the kitchen area there, on the left, first door on the right. Okay. I'm hoping this is going to be an evening of erudition, information, and entertainment. And that's one of the reasons why I'm so glad that we've got Georgina here.
Hi,
and
everyone.
We've got Svetlana here as well. These are two of our finest artists, and I say that with no hint of any kind of falsity whatsoever, because these guys are good. You can see some of the works on the wall behind me. We've got some of Georgina's paintings, the more nautical themed ones. We've got a mosaic by Svetlana and a couple of her portraits over there as well. Just a little bit of introduction first to the gallery. We are Graystone Gallery. Thank you very much for coming along tonight again. We have been in operation for about 5 months now, something like that. So we are a brand new kid on the block. We're the young upstart, if you like. And we are in Leith, in Edinburgh. We like being in Leith because, well, basically there's less competition from all the big galleries on Dundas Street. They don't come down here. So my name, for those of you who have not met yet, is Rob Briggs. I'm the co-owner and director of the gallery, together with my beautiful wife Leslie, who's sat at the back there. Say hi, Leslie. And we've also got our two colleagues here, Mark, who's sat next to Leslie there, and Nava, who is on her second day with us. So please be nice to both of them, actually. So, as I say, I couldn't be more pleased to have both Georgina and Svetlana here with us. So I'm just going to give you a brief introduction to each of them. Then what we'll do is I'll have a conversation with Georgina. Well, mostly a conversation. she might talk a bit. And after that, we'll open it up for a little bit of questions. So I'm hoping that through that you get an idea of her personality, her interests, her style, what motivates her. And if you've got any questions, please put them forward. If you don't have any questions, then either myself or Svetlana will start quizzing Georgina. I think she's going to like the audience questions a little bit more. Then these guys have known each other for ages. Then we'll have a short break just after 6:30, so you can top your glasses up, take a comfort break if you need to, and then same thing over again, but with Svetlana. Okay, and then after that, another short break shortly after 7, and an opportunity to quiz the both of them together. Do not quiz me. I'm just here to facilitate the conversation. That's the agenda for the evening. I hope that's okay for everybody. Let me just give a brief introduction to Georgina, and then I'll ask her to take it away. I hope that's okay. Right. So Georgina graduated from the Edinburgh College of Art with a BA Hons in drawing and painting in 2011. She was invited by the Royal Scottish Academy to exhibit as one of their new contemporaries. Her work draws mostly on inspiration from architecture and how it relates to the surrounding landscape, and recurring themes in her work include architecture with visible signs of decay and urban and industrial spaces. So I hope that's a reasonable summary, Georgina. Take it away.
Well, I'm going to start with way back of actually what got me into art, because my mum, even when I was tiny, I grew up in the Highlands, and there are lots of artists, but like my school only had 36 people. It was a tiny wee school, and we were just away in the middle of nowhere. But my mum always used to take me to the art shows at Duncan and Georgina at Dundee University, and I remember just going to the degree shows there and just being absolutely blown away. And ever since I was tiny, I always told everyone, I'm going to go to art school, that's what I'm going to do. So yeah, during high school I was painting, but it was very much what you expect at high school. You know, it was kind of vases and fruit and all them great things that do teach you the traditions of how to compose a picture, but at the same time, I knew that it wasn't really what I wanted to do. So when I came to Edinburgh, I went to Leith School of Art, which was just mind-blowing. See, I came there when I was 17, and from someone that's come from a background, we never even used acrylics, we never used oils. All I'd done is like paint fruit in kind of tempera paste or whatever was available at school. And then I remember just going to Leith School of Art and suddenly been opened up to a world of like sculpture, tapestry, even building up compositions with, collage, just things that we had never done before. And then I just thought it was so exciting, and it really just, actually, the way I paint today has come from that. So after that, I went to Edinburgh College of Art, where I met Svetlana. We were in years together, and yeah, even just being with peers who had just a completely different way of thinking and painting and just thinking outside the box, it just made my mind explore different things that, a picture doesn't have to just be like a copy of a photograph. It can be like your experience of being in the area, which is pretty much how I try and paint today. So yeah, lots of my themes, as you'll see, is like iconic Edinburgh, but I think it's just I still have that feeling of coming as a 17-year-old to Edinburgh and being excited by these things. So, the first time seeing the rail, you used to come on trips over it as like a teenager, but it's just such an iconic thing. Same as the Royal Yacht Britannia, or just these like really iconic Edinburgh scenes. I'm still like excited by them. So that's what I tend to go towards when I'm painting. And when I am painting, the way I go about it is the way I felt when I was in the area. So it's not necessarily, a copy of what I see, or I like to be recognizable, but it's more like, how did you feel at the time? Were you happy? Was it a dark day? Like, what was the atmosphere? Was it solemn? Was it, was there loads of people there? So I try and recapture that moment in my paintings. The way that I actually paint is, I used to paint in oils a lot, especially at art school, because they really encourage oils. But because I paint so thick, I don't know if you can see on these ones, but you'll see really thick layers of paint. I like to build up my layers quickly. And with oil paints, this can take like hours and ages to dry. So it just wasn't really working for me. So now I paint in acrylics. So I'll build up a layer. So for example, in the Royal Yacht Britannia, you'll see the orange. So I'll paint the whole thing orange. And that again is like a sense of the area. How did I feel at the time? Was it an orange day? Was it a blue day? Was it a green day? And I put that underneath, and then hopefully by the end it will kind of shine through. So yeah, so for example, something like that, I'll build it up in a layer, and then I'll do maybe the background, create an atmosphere. Was it raining? Was it sunny? Again, just trying to build up like the feeling for how I felt at the time. And then eventually I'll start putting in the actual icon of what it was. And actually, this goes back to high school, because I remember my high school teacher, we first learned about Cézanne and Cubism. And I always remember that my high school teacher, it was like, we went through like a stage of learning about Cézanne, and the way he painted fruit, he was basically saying that if you paint a lemon next to an orange, if the lemon feels more important, just paint the lemon big and paint the orange small. And not everything has to be exactly in perspective. It still looks like a composition, but sometimes he would like exaggerate things just because it was important to him. So that's always stuck with me as well. So if something's a wee bit more important, I'll make it a bit bigger. So hopefully overall it makes sense as a composition. But if you actually look at it, there might be a boat that's kind of pushed back a bit, or something that's more important, and I still kind of go with that to this day. I hope that's a bit about my work.
That's a good insight. I was just listening to you there. The one thing that struck me right at the beginning of your tales there was, why painting? So you mentioned there were different forms of art that when you went to college that you hadn't necessarily considered before. Why did you find yourself drawn towards painting rather than any other art form?
So actually, when I was growing up, the wee village that I grew up in, there's a really famous silversmith called Malcolm Appleby. He's a silversmith and an engraver, and I worked with him from first year at school right up until I went to uni. So every weekend from when I was like 12, 13 until I left at 17. And I loved jewellery. That's what I made. I was like silversmithing all the time, soldering, sculpting things, and I absolutely loved it. And I loved being tactile. So when I went to art school, it was actually Leith School of Art that kind of broadened my mind to painting a bit more. But when I went to Edinburgh College of Art, I still thought I was going to be a silversmith, because that's what I'd grown up learning, and it just kind of made sense to me. But when we did a painting block, I just fell in love with it. I loved the way that, like I said, that the stuff I'd done at high school was very much like there's an onion, there's an orange, or life drawing, whereas, kind of representing what's in front of you, which is a really important basis to being a good painter, but it wasn't my end goal. So when I learned about abstract expressionism and Rothko and Gerhard Richter, like all these kinds of people that just, their experience was the paint was the end thing. You could just stand in front of colours and just experience from it. I kind of wanted to mix that feeling of pure abstract with an experience of being at a location. So I decided to marry the two, and I just fell in love with it. So ever since probably I was like 18, I've painted in this style, and I've really enjoyed it.
That's good to know, and thank you for that explanation. I think that draws me a little bit onto one of the pictures that you've got up there, the 3 cranes.
Yeah.
Which, there's 2 things that I noticed from what you were saying. One, you were in a blue mood on that day.
Yeah, definitely.
Whatever the blue represents to you. And 2, ladies and gentlemen, if you've been on, has anybody here been on the tram yet?
Yes.
Yes? If you go round past the Port of Leith stop, you'll see those exact cranes there, and they're still in the same position today. And I think that's a really good example, both of what you're saying, Georgina, but also of the kind of perhaps little touches of urban decay or architecture, infrastructure that we see in the built environment.
Sorry to interrupt you. The thing I particularly enjoyed about this is because it was one of the things, my partner stayed in Leith down at Salamander Court, so we've seen these cranes all the time, and when we talked about them, loads of Leithers knew about them, but I enjoyed it because it's, like with Edinburgh, I paint like the Forth Bridge and things, which are great iconic things to paint, but I particularly enjoy this one because it's like, if you know, then you know. It's like a Leither thing, but it is though. I think there'll be people on the other side of Edinburgh that probably wouldn't know what those cranes are, but if you do know, then you're like, oh, that's the 3 cranes, so I really enjoyed that one.
Okay, now that's something that's come from real life. The tall ships behind you.
Yeah.
That's going back a few hundred years.
Yeah, that was 1800s, and
That's
I wasn't from life.
You're not that old, am I saying?
No.
Not that old. Where did the concept for that come from?
So I always enjoy like portraying history in my work. Usually the things that I paint, it's never particularly modern buildings, even though I really enjoy architecture. It's something where I can create a sense that this thing's been here a while, it's got a story to tell. And so usually I paint things like that have an obvious sign that they've been about for a while and they're iconic to Edinburgh. This, I actually found it in not this particular, but my inspiration, I saw in the National Portrait Gallery, and it was in the photography section. And it was a photograph of Leith docks. Very, very old photograph, and it was tall ships coming into the docks, but the way that it was coming in, you wouldn't even imagine it was Edinburgh, let alone Leith. They were sort of crashing, and the photograph was just so emotive, and it had so much movement and feeling, and I just thought I need to try and recreate that in a painting, because it was very much Leith, but at the same time you couldn't imagine it being Leith, if that makes sense, because it was just so, it's like something you see in like a movie or a film, and yeah, it was just, I couldn't imagine it being my Edinburgh, what I know of it. So yeah, I just really wanted to recreate it, but fit in with my current paintings as well. So, and kind of get that movement of the crashing of the ships, because it's just a time that you can't imagine.
So Jo, just tell me a little bit about the technique that you use to convey those kind of feelings, that kind of emotion, that kind of experience. So from a practical perspective, sorry, we're turning around a little bit here, but you've got a lot of almost swells in the water below, it looks like, and there's I wouldn't say a jumble, but a plethora of boats and different types of boats.
It was a plethora. That's a good way to describe it.
Plethora. So how do, from a technical perspective, how do you go about doing that?
So with my paintings, even though I was taught to use a brush at art school, as you are, I always really enjoyed using a palette knife. So now, because I'm on a larger scale, I actually use like plasterers' tools that they use to flatten a wall. So that's what I used to paint with.
Can I, sorry, I've been wanting you to talk about this a little bit, because like when we were at art school, you painted like very much, like a lot of really abstract things, and it was all about like the texture, and there was a lot of work that you did that was like replicated like this peeling effect, like urban decay, and it was all about, so there was no like recognizable forms, it was all about just the paint and the quality of the paint and how different paints react with each other to create different effects. I don't know, I just want you to say something about that, because that was, I really loved that work as well. It was quite
these
different.
kind of areas here where you see it and it's almost like feathered. So see the white, that's the pure canvas, the white coming through to the blue, coming through to the beige. That was what I was doing a lot of at art school, but rather than coming up with a finished piece, I would just do lots of huge texture studies. So it might be 2 meters by 2 meters, but just of those kind of textures, working out what I could build up, how do different colours, paints, textures react to each other. And it was pure studies, and I really, really enjoyed them. And it gives a huge basis to what I'm doing now, because it's how I build up my areas. But at the end of the day, I wanted to bring in a wee bit form and a wee bit more nod to Edinburgh back to that. So, but if I'd never done that, then I wouldn't be able to build up. Like, that's the thing about my work. It is abstract, but you still know what it is. So it's more like the abstractness and the use of the paint helps me build the feeling. And then at the end, I can come in with the object that hopefully gives the sense of the history and the area. So with a painting like this, I would build up, again, like I said, I quite like the canvas coming through it sometimes, just to remind you that there is a white canvas back there. And then we've got the blue and then the beige, because it was, you know, those old school photographs where they've got that kind of...
Sepia?
That's what I was going to say. That was definitely the word I was going to use. Yeah, that kind of orangey warm tone to it. So that's where the colours came in. And then to get the sense of the boats, I was literally just kind of recreating the movement with my hand and keeping it as kind of fluid as possible. Again, back to the Cézanne explanation, some of this will not be completely correct to the photograph, but say if I've moved one way and I really like that movement, I'll adjust the painting around that. But overall, if I had the photograph next to you, you'd be like, oh, that is that. But at the same time, it's kind of my reaction to it, while still adhering to the original image.
A bit more about the Royal Yacht Britannia painting that we've got over here. I think that what you've just explained there helps us to better. But why did you choose to paint the Royal Yacht? And the other thing that strikes me is the orange pieces that come through.
Yeah.
Again, I'm not sure why there's orange in it. I'm not criticising, I'm just saying.
No, you're absolutely fine. It was. Do you know what? It was actually one of those days where you know when it's really grey, but you get a wee bit of sun like coming through. It's either first thing at the day usually or last thing at night. But if it's a really cloudy day, but there's a wee break in it, and then you kind of get like almost like beams of orange. So that's where it came from. But I just decided to take the whole thing through because I knew the sky was going to be blue because of the day. I just felt like it, and I knew that obviously the boat's going to be blue, and a lot of the flags are blue. So I just thought, you know, I'm going to take that orange the whole way through and just kind of give it that lift. And obviously orange and blue work well together. So yeah, it was a plan. That was the plan in my head. And then so I built up all the background, and then I wanted the water to have movement, but not so much that it's, you know, in a storm or something. It just to feel like the boat, because it does sway up and down, and it's got a lovely feeling to it. So I wanted you to feel like you're moving kind of with it, but it's like a calmness. It's not a unsteady movement. And then the actual ship, I didn't want to put in anything else. I just wanted it to be, because it is an icon, and I just wanted it to give its own, you know, time in the middle of the piece and just really shine through.
And that's quite interesting because obviously the Royal Yacht is moored up very close to it.
Yeah.
But you've not chosen to show it in its current situation.
No.
It looks like it almost looks like it's anchored, but there's no buildings there.
Yeah, no, it's almost as if I wanted to blank out the background, so you know it is, obviously it's moored and it's there, but at the same time, by pulling the composition in and give it really close to the boat, that you could imagine it at sea at the same time. You know, if you had a bigger perspective on that, it's up to the kind of viewer to imagine, well, are you going to imagine like, you know, Ocean Terminal there, or are you going to imagine it on the high seas as it would have been back in the day? So it's kind of open to interpretation on that one.
Thank you. But, before I ask you a couple more questions, first of all, I want to turn to you, Svetlana, and ask you, if you've got any questions that, based on that you would like to ask Georgina now. Bear in mind, guys, these guys have known each other.
She's my bridesmaid.
I'm just, do you know what I keep thinking about? That crit that we had, a particularly heated crit we had at ECA, about when a girl asked you about, oh, why aren't you using like household paints? Like, why did you choose?
Yeah.
I remember, I hope you feel you don't feel as heated about it now, but
Don't know, I might keep
I remember like, Yeah, you did not like that question, but
No,
because a lot of people at the time were using
Yeah.
like household paints, and because again, like at the time you were painting, you were looking for paints to react to each other. So there was like whole paintings where there was like whole bits that were like peeling and hanging off the painting. And they were like, oh, couldn't you achieve that with like household paints? And you were like, no, because I don't even know if you managed to get out like all the reasons, because you felt so like you had so many reasons of exactly why.
I think that was a
like
huge.
you were using oil paint and acrylic paint, because you were using both of them at the time, if you remember, which was
That was like it was actually a big battle at art school, because art school, obviously I don't know what it's like now, but at the time it was going through a struggle of, is painting enough? Why aren't you painting with concrete and making it 3D and painting on top of the concrete? I remember a tutor saying to me like, why don't you paint on a box and take a photograph of the box? And I'm like, why would I do that? Like for me, being on a painting course, it should be enough that you want to be a painter. You want to learn everything about paint. How does it react in this way? What tools can I use? Like I was really fascinated by paint. I could have studied another 4 years just with acrylic and oils. I genuinely loved it. So for me, I just found getting questioned a lot, like why do you enjoy painting so much? It was really tough.
It was just like a stupid question. It's like, if you do painting, you know why you enjoy painting so much. It's like there's no.
Yeah.
It's
I remember
really
going on another crit. I
justify
don't know if you were there, but there was one where I was painting and we went round a crit and everyone's like, great paintings, but it is just paint. And I'm like, well, that's why we're here. Like,
the whole point.
And then like it went round in circles and I was like, oh, this is soul destroying. And then afterwards we went to a person who had taken a photograph of them eating a banana and then rolling down a hill. It was a video on loop and they just went, roll down the hill, roll down the hill. And everyone's like, this is fantastic. And I was like, what am I doing here? But it was like, at the time, they just were really pushing that paint was kind of done.
And actually by that point, it was already an outdated concept, the fact that painting was done. It wasn't done.
Even that is outdated.
It had already come back like many times over, and I think people just weren't getting that, and I think a lot of people didn't appreciate like the joy of just painting and just even like the joy of using that material, whether you're creating like something abstract, figurative, like anything.
That was definitely the difference between Leith School of Art and Edinburgh College of Art. Where Leith School of Art, they would be teaching you every single thing about, okay, why does this yellow sit next to this green well? Why is this red? They would teach you every single little thing about tones, colour, palette, texture, everything. Whereas when we got to ECA, it was very much them trying to put ideas into your head but it's like, I've got my ideas, I've got my concepts. How, as a tutor, in my opinion, you should teach me how to achieve my own concepts rather than put concepts into my head.
100%.
So, art school was a struggle, but we did
we
well.
We had like very similar struggles, I feel
very
like,
similar
with
experiences,
that,
But that's how you can tell that we love painting, because we're still here 10 years later. So
there's whole rooms of aesthetics and philosophy of art that we could get into. From that, which I'm not going to bore you with.
That's for another talk.
That's something entirely different. What I'd like to do now, if you don't mind, George, is just open it up to you guys. What questions do you have that you specifically like to ask Georgina? And don't worry if there's a deathly silence, I'll step in.
Well, do you take photographs? And if you don't paint in situ for things like that? So would you take photographs, or just from memories, or?
No, so usually I'll go down to the space and get a feeling for the space and take photographs. But if it's not an angle that I can get, I'll also look for aerial shots online just to even get more. I do it quite a lot with the bridge. Just if I've been there on the day, I'll go there on the day, experience what I'm trying to portray in the painting, but then I'll take my own photographs, but at the same time I'll look for aerial shots on a sunny day just to see how it hits the top and how it hits the bottom, just to get an all-rounded view of what it would seem like on a sunny day or a rainy day. So I do a bit of both. I go to the place, I take my own photographs, and I look online as well to see if there's any other wee snippets that I've missed. Thank you.
Do you ever paint outside?
No.
Directly?
No, I have drawn outside, but I'm a very messy painter. I'm not one of these people with a little palette. I'm sort of paint everywhere. Like most of my clothes in my house have some sort of paint on them. So for me to take painting outside, I'd probably need like 5 suitcases. Thank you.
Please.
Could I ask about your attraction to industrial decay? I mean, I'm guessing it might be because you like living in former times, or it might be that you're wanting to these things before they disappear?
Yeah, I actually think it's from growing, like the wee village that I grew up in is called Grantley, so it's in between Pitlochry and Aberfeldy, and it's very leafy, it's in the middle of nowhere, and everything's kind of like barns and stable houses. So when I came to Edinburgh, I'd never experienced living in an industrial sort of place, even though Edinburgh is beautiful and leafy. There's wee snippets of, you know, where you can see the history, but in a more industrial route. So I just really enjoyed it, and I've been fascinated by it. And also my family are into construction. My dad's a builder, my sister's a town planner, so I've always been interested in sort of buildings and structures and questioning why a building's like this. And yeah, I think it's just always stuck with me, but especially Edinburgh, like ever since I've moved here, I've been fascinated with it. Thank you.
It suits your style as well, doesn't it? Like the whole industrial look with the way you use like the palette knife, and
yeah,
it's kind of like it's blocky and it's bold and it's. Do you know? I mean, you couldn't paint like flowers in that.
No.
Well, you could. No. It wouldn't be the same kind of effect.
No, I'm definitely like. That's what I love to paint: buildings, industrial spaces. I've been asked like, "Oh, can you do a commission for a portrait?" And I'm like, "Can you imagine?" Like,
it'd be quite cool, actually.
Yeah, no. As much as I've learnt portraiture, it's not my thing. What I enjoy is industrial spaces. It doesn't always have to be industrial. I've painted castles and things that I find really interesting, but it's more buildings that have got, you know, like a bit of character about them, a bit of angularness, and just a statement building as well, where you know that's that building. It couldn't be anything else. Like, I really enjoy that.
I want to ask what's next. So I appreciate it's a bit of a big... Yeah, not in life. I want to ask what's next in terms of maybe a current work in progress, or a direction you're heading in, or a piece that you might be thinking about.
So actually what I'm thinking about at the moment is I've also got work in a gallery back home, so I've been working on a lot of pieces back home, which is really nostalgic for me. I've never done it since I've worked and lived in Edinburgh. So for me, working on some pieces, but finding that the feeling that Edinburgh gives me, but finding things that I grew up around, because when you grow up around things, you take them for advantage, obviously. You don't really notice them, especially as a moody teenager. But there are beautiful, beautiful bridges and things, even in Perth. So I feel like I would like to explore the rest of Scotland, and just even, like, I spent a lot of my childhood in Dundee as well, because that was like the cool place to be when you're a teenager. So even exploring like Tay Bridge as much of it as explored the Forth Bridge, and just, yeah, exploring different parts of Scotland, but definitely within Scotland. I do really enjoy Scotland.
Okay, good. And if I could ask you a little bit more about your influences, but not from an art perspective. So I'm going to take this off on a little bit of a tangent. Okay. So you've spoken about your influences, about your heart, how your art builds up.
Yeah.
What about tastes in other forms of creative art, like writing, poetry, music?
Yeah.
What floats your boat?
Well, I play piano. I'm a classically trained pianist, and so I really enjoy Chopin, like Bach, Mozart. So I was going to say an old school favourite of mine. Love a wee bit Mozart. But as well, like, I love bands, like Queen are my favourite band. I always have on music when I'm painting, and that is very much as the mood takes me. So, and I've gotten a very eclectic mix of music. But see, if I needed a break and I don't want to concentrate on the painting, I just need to get myself away from it, I always go and play a wee bit piano and then just come back. And I always find that, because when you're playing piano, the only thing you can focus on is the notes and what you're playing, especially like complex classical pieces. Your mind can't wander. So if I think, oh, I need to take myself away from the painting, I'll go and play a wee bit piano and then come back, and I'm usually in a different eye. Sometimes I come back and I'm like, oh, this is awful. I need to regroup here. So it doesn't always go the way I want it, but you come back with fresh eyes, and then you're kind of like a new viewer, because you've taken yourself out the equation. So yeah, was that the question? Yeah, yep. No, I hope I answered that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's great advice for any of us who work in the creative industries.
Regroup, take yourself away, because if you look at things too long, then you can kind of, if you ever like written an essay and then you go to proofread it and you think it's right, but then you read it back and you've said like "and" twice, or you've done something. I think most people have done something like that. It's like that in painting, and if you keep looking at the same thing, your mind learns to read the mistakes. So by taking yourself out of it and concentrating on something else, when you come back, then you can see if there's any errors. Or sometimes you come back and you're like, oh, that's blooming brilliant. Like, I've done really well here. So it can go either way.
That's great, and what a wonderful segue as well about regrouping and coming back with fresh eyes. So what I'd like to do now is just to give Georgina a round of applause.
Oh, thank you, everybody.
And we will take a short break for 5 minutes. When we come back, I'll be talking to Svetlana.
Thank you.
5 minutes. Please refresh your cups.
Thank you. That was so good. Thank you so much for your questions.
That's all right.
Okay, I wish I had come first now. You set the bar high.
Very, very great questions.
Yeah, that was really good.
Oh, it's interesting.
Yeah.
You did really well.
Thank you.
I actually want to
It's
keep
easy to
talking.
talk once you get going. And
Yeah.
the audience are great. They were smiling and
They're all
amazing.
concentrating.
It was really good.
At least you
So
got a couple
natural.
of questions from the audience as
Yeah,
well.
exactly. And you did great as well, thank you. Because there was parts there that I'd forgotten about, like how art school stories, and people like hearing that as well. Because I actually forget about that. I kind of try and
I
blank
know.
it out.
You're like, let's not talk about that.